Today's going to be a particularly great one to kick off. I'm going to show you how we built what we think, anyway, is the perfect podcast studio. But first, look at this. Yes, it arrived. That is a silver play button. That's correct. And yes, this here, this is it. You've seen it before, probably in a podcast. It's taken us quite a while to get to a stage where we're really happy with it. Like everything at the InGaff studio, we want it to be as plug and play as possible, as in we can leave it all set up as a set, ready to go, hit the lights on, hit record, and you're done. Really, it's just because we're stupid and lazy. Okay, so we'll start gear-wise. Obviously, everyone's here for the gear. SM7B microphones, because they are dynamic, and that's important because it cuts out a lot of the background noise. They're less sensitive than condenser microphones. The problem with SM7Bs, as everyone knows, is that they are very quiet, which means you need a cloud lifter. But the problem we had is that there's two of us, so one cloud lifter is not going to do it. Managed to find a 2-channel one, which was particularly cool. The other problem with SM7Bs is that the base of them here runs quite high. So typically on stands like these Sontronics boom stands, you can't freely spin the microphone because the top of the XLR will hit this. So you have to get this little extension rod. They're ridiculously overpriced. Then coming on, obviously, the Rodecaster Pro. The big thing for me is obviously, like everything else, it's really easy to plug and play, and the preamps, the mic preamps, sound really good straight out of the box. So they're particularly good with the Rode microphone. They just sound lovely. So without any heavy lifting, you've got a really great sounding setup. So I suppose that brings us on to talking about the acoustic treatment, which is really, really important. We've got the great sound from the microphone, but if the room still sounds rubbish, it's still going to sound rubbish. And yes, I got my full geek on to do this. And as you can see, and I'll show you some other shots of us putting them up, we've got these acoustic panels behind us, and they are made of rock wool and wood. So these aren't the cheap foam panel eggshell things that you see on Amazon. If you think about acoustic treatment, don't buy those. They don't work. Just simple insulation inside a wooden frame, that does the trick. And these have dramatically changed how this room sounds. And also, what was really important with these acoustic panels when you put them up, firstly, that they don't touch the wall, so there's a bit of an air gap behind. That's really important for dampening the sound. And secondly is that you don't cover your entire room fully in tiles. Even if you're using those cheap foam ones, don't cover your entire wall in them. Leave some gaps. You want the room to still sound like it's a natural sounding room. If you cover it entirely, it'll start to sound really artificial and weird. Next up, yes, a blackout curtain all the way around. That is basically just a really thick stage curtain that we've pinned up against the ceiling. It blocks out all the light because that whole wall is a window. And if you get a proper blackout curtains, they'll also stop the sound, or most of the sound, reflecting against the glass as well. So kind of a double win. Get thermally insulated blackout curtains, and they act really well as acoustic blankets as well. So on to the lighting, yes, and it's really, really simple. The lighting setup in this studio is literally one overhead light above the conversation. This overhead light is just really simply hung, one of those cheap old black tripod stands with a boom arm across the top and some nice old weights and a sandbag. We don't use sand, we actually use dumbbell weights in there because we're too fat to go to the gym. And yes, to prove this is a cheap light, that's right, it is total. Depending on which show we're recording, we'll also have a little panel like kicking some light onto the table, and that's to light any products that we're talking about specifically here. Now, the background's probably my favorite part of the set. It's important if you're going to be recording a video podcast that you have something that isn't distracting in your background, but that is visually interesting enough to keep people's interest if they're going to be watching for up to an hour at times. And literally my favorite part of it isn't the things that are on the bookshelf, but it's these awesome tube lights that I bought from a home furniture store. And they turned out to be absolutely wicked. The other big thing here was that we had this issue of a dirty grate radiator behind the shot. So we needed to cover it up and distract people from the fact that there's a radiator there. So this bookshelf with those lights absolutely does that. The whole thing, it serves as dual purposes. It adds a bit of color to the shot. It adds some acoustic treatment. It blocks the reflections from the radiator, but also it does just look Really cool. Now, as quite often me and Pete are recording this together, which means we need to be able to monitor ourselves on the camera to make sure we're still in frame and in focus. And a normal 7-inch or 5-inch monitor from this distance on top of that camera isn't going to cut it. So we got around this by literally getting an old, I think this is a 32-inch TV, and just plugging the HDMI into it. Yes, it's slightly cropped. Yes, the colors aren't accurate. No, it's not perfect for monitoring, but as a director's monitor, just to see what's going on from a distance, it's absolutely perfect. I can just see what's going on. And the reason is behind the telly and slightly obscured. If you have people on the show that aren't used to working on cameras, they tend to look at the monitor at themselves more than the camera. So put the monitor right behind the camera lens. When they start looking at themselves, it still looks like they're looking at the camera. So a simple 2-camera setup, one on a wide shot with everything in, one on a punched in shot, close in on the table. And in case anyone is wondering how do we know where's in focus, there's the dot. And of course, last but not least is we do use this set for live streaming as well. And to do that, you guessed it, it is the Blackmagic A10 Mini. Really simple HDMI switcher that plugs straight into your laptop via USB-C. Interestingly, you can take the output from the Rode desk, yes, the audio output from the Rode desk here, and plug it into the A10 Mini's microphone input. So then we can use the SM7B through the Rodecaster into the A10 Mini with its HDMI input, and we've got great sounding audio and a cool looking camera for live streaming. So that's our podcast studio, woohoo! And this is all the gear we use for it, why we made the decisions we made to build it, and the set, and all the rest of it. Let me know if you liked this kind of video. I'm really keen on doing some more of it, showing you what we do and why we do it and who for and all the rest of that good stuff. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you think. What would you suggest we do differently if you really hate what we do? It won't hurt my feelings, but you know, it won't hurt it too much. Yeah, and until the next time,